Law number 20 is the law of explosive growth, and the law of explosive growth says leaders who develop leaders multiply. In other words, to add growth, you've got to have followers. But to multiply growth, you've got to have leaders. And this is a law that talks about how to have explosive growth, and basically the law says you've got to get on the leadership side. And there's a difference between what I call followers math and leaders math. Followers math is addition. Leaders math is multiplication. And what you've got to do is you've got to understand in this law that if you want to multiply, you've got to get on the leadership side. So what I've done is I've made a study of this question because I've asked myself this question often. I've asked myself this question often. Why is it that some leaders develop leaders and some leaders develop followers? And I have come to the conclusion that there are some distinct differences between leaders who develop followers and leaders who develop leaders. And I want to give you today those distinct differences because you're going to see them for yourself as I begin to relay them to you. For example, number one, desire. There's a difference in the desire of leaders who develop followers versus leaders who develop leaders. So let me explain that. Leaders who develop followers need to be needed. In other words, they want people to need them. They love the fact that followers say, oh my goodness, I need you, I couldn't make it without you. They love that. So leaders who develop followers, they need to be needed, where leaders who develop leaders want to be succeeded. And there's a world difference between those two. You see, leaders who develop leaders, they say, my goodness, I hope somebody will succeed me. I hope somebody will rise above me. I hope somebody will do better than I do. Boy, I hope I pour my life into somebody that someday they're way up here and I can look and say, look, I helped develop them. Leaders who develop leaders want to be succeeded. Leaders who only develop followers, they just want to be needed. They want those followers to tell them how important they are, and I couldn't make it without you, and you've made my life. They want to hear that. It's very ego-satisfying. You see, leaders who develop followers to get their ego satisfaction from people that need them. Leaders who develop leaders get their ego satisfaction out of watching the people they've developed literally pass them up. By the way, that's why more leaders develop followers than leaders who develop leaders. It's the difference in the desire. Ask yourself the question, what's my desire? Do I desire to have people just stroke me and tell me how good I am, or do I have a desire to reproduce myself and develop leaders around me, some of them which will undoubtedly be quicker, better, faster, and smarter than me? My goal is to have people that I develop pass me up. What's your desire? Because what your desire is will determine whether you develop leaders or develop followers. Number two, focus. The focus is different. Let me explain. Leaders who develop followers focus on the weaknesses of people. And leaders who develop leaders, they focus on the strengths of people. Major difference. You see, if you and I focus on the weaknesses of people, we'll work with people in a sense of counseling. If we work on the strengths of people, we'll work with people in the area of equipping. And let me just say something about working on weaknesses versus working on strengths, because this is a fact. I've said in a previous law, people don't pay for average. When I work on my weaknesses, or when you work on your weaknesses, let's say from a 1 to 10, I'm a 2 in something, which is very weak. And I say, oh my goodness, I'm going to really work on this. Can I tell you something? I can go from a 2 to maybe a 3. Perhaps if I really work hard, spend a lot of time and energy, maybe I can get to a 4. Can I tell you something? If I work hard, I go from a 2 to a 4. The good news is I've made progress. The bad news is nobody will pay for it, because people don't pay for average. You don't pay for average. I don't pay for average. Think about it. When's the last time you went into your house and you looked at your wife and said, hey, babe, let's go out to an average restaurant? Man, it's just let's go to an average restaurant. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could go to an average restaurant? And so you go to an average restaurant, you pull up to the average restaurant, and you go in and sit at an average table. And you look and say, boy, I really hope an average waiter takes care of us. We don't want a good waiter. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if we got a waiter that, forgot to look at us once in a while and didn't come around and refill the drink? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we just had a waiter that, messed up the order? Not both orders, but one of the orders, just average. You know what I'm saying? We don't want to mess up both orders. Wouldn't it be, average meal at an average restaurant with an average waiter? I mean, it can't get any more average than that. And once you're done with that, you say, wasn't that fun? Hey, we got some time. Got an idea? Hey, let's go to an average movie. Let's go to an average movie. Let's see. Now, honey, is there any movie that none of our friends have been talking about? You know what I mean? Because you know what? You go to an average movie, you always have plenty of seats. Oh, I love that. I love that. And after we've gone to an average movie, we can go home, we can look at each other and say, hadn't it been wonderful? We spent together an average evening together in an average restaurant with an average waiter, with average food, and an average movie. Oh, what a wonderful average day. I love life. Boy, I hope tomorrow I can just do some more average things. People don't pay for average. The question I have is, why do so many people like it? Why do you like it? Why do you want to be average? Don't work on your weaknesses, because if you work on your weaknesses, I promise you, you'll just be average. Let's say from a 1 to a 10, let's say you're a 6 at something, and you work at a 6, and you go up to 7 to an 8. Now all of a sudden, you're up there at 8. Now, can I tell you something? When you get to be an 8 or a 9, people pay to hear you. People pay to see you. People pay to listen to you. People pay to talk to you. People pay to find out what you're thinking. You see, you got to play to your strengths. Don't play to your weaknesses. I know. Our whole culture has said, work on your weaknesses. Our whole culture is wrong. Don't work on your weaknesses. They taught us that if you got an A in math and a C in English, you worked on English. You're always going to be bad in English. Trust me, I know. I love to sing. That's the good news. The bad news is I'm not any good at it. So I'm a 2 on singing. But I want to sing, so what do? I get a music teacher, and I take vocal lessons, and I take sight reading, and I spend 3 or 4 years. Can I tell you something? When I've done 3 or 4 years from now, I don't know. So I was a 2, maybe now I'm a 3. Here's what I know. None of you in this room, none of you, not even my mother, is going to say, hey, I'd love to pay to hear John sing. No. You'll pay to shut me up, not to hear me sing. You see, leaders who develop leaders, they're equippers. They look for the strengths in their people and they work on them. Leaders who develop followers, they work on weaknesses and never get a return on the weaknesses of their people and wonder why their company is not successful. Number 3, priorities. You see, the priorities of leaders who develop followers and leaders who develop leaders are different. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. Leaders who develop followers devote attention to the bottom 20%. We've already studied the Pareto principle. And leaders who develop leaders, they devote attention to the top 20%. A world of difference. Number 4 is abilities. Leaders who develop followers are good leaders. But leaders who develop leaders are great leaders. Goes back to the law of respect, remember? It goes back to the law of magnetism. Sure it does. They're cousins, remember? If you're a 4 as a leader, you're only going to attract 3s. The quality of person that you're going to have in your organization isn't going to be any high. So leaders who develop followers are good leaders because perhaps that's all they can attract. But leaders who develop leaders, they're great leaders. They're going after those 7s, 8s, and 9s. Number 5, attitude. There's a difference in attitude. See, leaders who develop followers lift up themselves. They love to hear their people lift them up. But leaders who develop leaders lift others. They lift up others. Number 6 is in the area of time. Leaders who develop followers spend time with people. Leaders who develop leaders invest time with people. World of difference between those two. Number 7 is expectations. Leaders who develop followers ask for little commitment. Leaders who develop leaders ask for much commitment. That's a fact. Number 8, there's even a difference in leadership. Leaders who develop followers lead everyone the same, but leaders who develop leaders lead everybody differently because they realize that not all people are motivated by the same thing and have the same values, so they understand that you lead people according to who they are, not according to one similar plan for everybody. And finally, the 9th difference between leaders who develop followers and leaders who develop leaders is this one: impact. Leaders who develop followers impact this generation. And leaders who develop leaders, they impact the next generation.